Hello YouTube, it's again time to do a season update on my red turbo AQ171 boat. Volvo B230, 16 valve turbo, roughly 450-500 horsepower. I had some problems last season with it. I first blew a head gasket around midsummer when having a little race with my friend. I just let it go too far with the boost. I had like 1.7 or 1.8 bar, so roughly like, what's it, 25 psi maybe, closer to 30 psi anyway, something around there. And so I lost the head gasket between, was it second and third cylinder maybe or something, and I had to drive home like for half an hour with 3 cylinders working and adding seawater instead of coolant, but yeah, it went fine. Then later in the season I broke the third cylinder again. It's always the third cylinder. I broke the exhaust valve on it because the exhaust manifold had a crack in the runner and was leaking seawater onto the third cylinder exhaust valve. So I had the head off again, like in what was it, November, it was beginning of November, and I took off the head. And when I was on my paternity leave, we had a little daughter last October. Then I worked like several weeks on this goddamn boat. I had it at sea and was working here at the pier like 1 or 2 or 3 days in the week, and not much, like an hour or 2 every evening, but yeah, I got it finished and I drove it instead of having it towed. So I drove it up on the trailer and had it. I took it out from sea, I think it was maybe 3rd of January or something like that, and I put it at sea again in March. I got pretty close to 900 nautical miles of it last year, so it was a definite record, closer to 70 driving hours. I've never used any boat that much in my life, but so it's a proof that my crazy concept works. This year I have had a bit over 20 hours on it, roughly a bit over 300 nautical miles, working really well so far, except I lost the timing belt, which was 19 hours old at the time, and like 6 months since I've swapped it for an original Volvo belt. But I think it was the tensioner, because it had a little bit of play in it and I hadn't thought about swapping it for a new, even if I had one. So, well, I lost a belt and the tensioner. Well, got a new one, and I ordered 3 belts so I can do a full renovation next year and have a spare belt. And I got really lucky because I did not lose any valves. It was like crazy luck. I have never ever seen one of these engines lose a belt, or I just lost like 5, 6, 7 teeth from the belt. So the crank was spinning with the starter motor, but the camshafts weren't spinning. So I think I had the timing in. I think it had left both cams in such a place that it was just barely running free when the crank was rotating, because I took it out from here from the pier and I reversed it out, and then I put it into forward and revved it up to 2000 rpm, and suddenly I lost power. It was just idling, so I drove it back like 50 meters and then the engine stalled. So I got really lucky, so I just needed to replace the belt. It was like crazy. Of course I put a new tensioner. Well, anyway, driving again for like maybe 15 hours, 10 hours after that, working fine. Let's see how much we get out from it this year. I'm going to do a full rebuild on it next in the winter. I was already going to do it this winter, but I just hadn't the time. I had it at sea till January 3rd, and I think I put it at sea in, was it maybe end of March? Yeah, let's go and have a ride. I had some problems also with the alternator, and I had an exhaust leak. I had the exhaust bellow blow off inside the engine room, and it filled the engine room halfway with seawater, So I also lost a starter motor that was also 19 hours old. Well, I got it cleaned and fixed, so it's working again. And also my alternator is bad, and well, it's been bad since I bought it. I think it was just cheap and bad quality, but anyway, here you can hear some fluttering from the engine. It's running a bit uneven, not that bad at all. Yeah, it's charging, as you can see, 13 volts now. The exhaust temp, I have got some problems with that, and also the boost gauge. Now it shows the exhaust temps only like 140 degrees, but when I start driving it, it jumps up to like 650 degrees, and that's not, this is Celsius degrees, and that's a bit too hot. But I'll have to see around that. I've adjusted the engine program a bit, and yeah, seems to work reasonably well. The boost gauge, I think the sensor has some problems. It works now and then, but now it's been at full. Yeah.